it's Hallie, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about my 5-star predictions for the rest of the year. So these are books that I currently own and are on my TBR that I plan on reading the second half of the year, or at least trying to. But these are all books that I think that I'm going to give 5 stars to. Up first, and probably not a surprise for anybody who has read this book, I'm going to expect to give 5 stars to Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this book follows a groupie of sorts, and I believe this book is written in like an interview format, which I really enjoy books that are like that, and they tend to be faster reads when you can read them like that as well. But I loved The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave 5 stars to that. It was such a good book, and it's been my favorite book so far this year. So I'm expecting to love it, Daisy Jones and the Six. I have heard that this book is even better than The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is really, really going to have to surprise me because I absolutely loved Evelyn Hugo. So we'll see once we get to this. I'm probably gonna read this sooner rather than later. So after talking about Daisy Jones and the Six, of course I have to mention Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think I'm gonna give this 5 stars, but I'm a little hesitant on it just because it takes place over one night. And books that take place over a small period of time, I tend to not like as much. But with this being a Taylor Jenkins Reid book, I have to just assume I'm gonna give it 5 stars. So we'll just have to wait and see until I read it. I don't know very much about it other than it is like a group of kids and they're having a party in Malibu, of course. And it's over the events that happen over one night. So we'll see. I've also heard that there are little like snippets of things that compare to like Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six, that if you've read those books, you'll know what they're talking about in this book. So I'm excited to see how this intertwines with her other 2 books. Next up, I have The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, and this follows a woman, I believe in 1920s. It starts in the 1920s. And this is a time when women are just expected to get married. So she gets married to a man, but in the 1930s, things have changed drastically. The farm she lives on is basically non-existent now, and she has to decide if she's gonna stay in Texas with her family or if she's gonna travel to California to start a new life. Kristen Hanna's books are always so heart-wrenching, and I'm excited to read this, but I'm also hesitant. I'm kind of nervous because in The Nightingale, I had to stop several times because I was just bawling my eyes out over certain things, and I know that this is probably gonna make me feel the same way. So I'm finding a time when I can actually really sit down and read this book, and maybe after summer, because in summer I like to read lighter books that aren't so heavy. So we'll see when I get to this. Hopefully, maybe I'll get to it when my other 2 oldest kids go back to school. We'll see, but I definitely want to get to this before the end of the year. So this next book I have, I really hadn't heard much about it prior to getting it in my Fairy Loot box, but it is Fire with Fire by Destiny Soria, and this is a YA contemporary fantasy. So it's set in a contemporary world, and these 2 sisters have been raised to be dragon slayers, but the dragons aren't quite what they've been taught that they are. So one sister is all about slaying dragons, and the other is more interested in doing her schoolwork. Till one day she meets a dragon that she ends up having this really strong bond with. So these 2 sisters are now on 2 opposite sides of a war, but they're still trying to protect each other. I love dragons, so let alone that this has dragons in it. Then it's about 2 sisters, which I think is really cool. I love books that are about sisters, and I'm so excited to read this because I love books that have animal companions to them. So I think that this will be very interesting to read, especially with that animal companion being a dragon. 2 of my favorite books are Circe and The Song of Achilles because I love Greek mythology. I think all of that is very interesting, and I think it's also very fun to read about. So this next book is 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes, and I think this book is going to be so good. So this book is basically a retelling of sorts of the Iliad, but it takes place during the Trojan War, but from the women's point of view. So it's from different women. It's not just in Troy that this book is about. It's about the Trojan women when their city catches fire. It's about the Amazon princess who fought Achilles. And then it's also about Penelope, who is waiting on an island for Odysseus. And if you've read the Odyssey, you know that Odysseus is gone for a very, very long time. Not only is he gone for the 10 years of the Trojan War, but if you've read the Odyssey, you know that it takes him a long time to get home. I think I'm gonna absolutely love this book. Well, after talking about Greek mythology, I love mythology in general. So this next book is based off of Norse mythology, and it's called The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. And this is about a witch that falls in love with the god Loki. Now, after reading that first line, what more do you need to know about the book? That sounds so interesting to me. Just interesting that how the mortal ends up falling in love with a god, let alone that it's Loki, who is he's a god of mischief. He's sort of like the bad guy in a sense, so it'll be interesting to see this other side to the god Loki. Next, I have Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco, and the second book to this comes out at the end of this year sometime. I don't remember exactly when it comes out, but it's called Kingdom of the Cursed. And this book was marketed as a YA fantasy, but I believe the new book, Kingdom of Cursed, is going to be marketed more as like a new adult fantasy. This book is about two twin sisters, and their names are Emilia and Victoria. Emilia finds her sister dead, and she goes about trying to get revenge for her sister's death, trying to find the people who murdered her sister. And along the way, she ends up having to use dark magic, which is forbidden, which no one has used in a very long time. But she also gets help from Wrath, the Prince of Hell. So all of that sounds super interesting to me. I've heard so many good things about this book. I've seen so many like fan art and fan stories that go along with Kingdom of the Wicked. Just everything about this story like screams what I love in a book. It's kind of like an historical fantasy. I think people have said that it seems like it's kind of set in Victorian times. And I've seen artwork for Kingdom of the Wicked, and just the clothing that they have on is definitely historical. Not only is this historical fantasy, but we also have witches in it and princes of hell. I'm just really excited to get into this book. All right, the last book that I have on my 5-star predictions list is Flamefall by Rosaria Munda, and this is the sequel to Fireborn, and I absolutely loved Fireborn. I thought it was so good. There was a lot of political intrigue in the story. It was a little slow to start. You got all that political and like world building info that you need when you have a fantasy series. But I'm really excited to read this because the last book left off on a cliffhanger, and I can't wait to find out what happens in this. But this is a fantasy world of dragon riders, and the new regime that governs this world took over after old dragon rider rulers who had slaves and mistreated the people under them. But these books kind of talk about, is the new regime actually better than the old one? Or is it just kind of hiding the bad things? So I believe after the ending in the first one, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but this book is probably going to be a war between two different sides. And you'll just have to wait and see who is going to come out the winner. So those are all my 5-star predictions for the rest of the year. These are just books that I think I'm going to give 5 stars to, that I'm going to read before the end of the year, hopefully. Cross my fingers. I'm not sure I'll get to all of them, but I really hope I'm going to. I'm going to try to read a little bit more. I've not been reading as much as I want to. Hopefully I can start reading a few more books per month than I have been. But I think also with these books, I might do a reading vlog of reading my 5-star predictions, so you guys can kind of see my reactions to the books as I'm reading them. But thank you guys so much for watching my video today. Make sure to hit the subscribe button before you go, and hit the bell icon if you want to be notified when I post new content. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.